Conduit. Is a word used by traitors who sympathize with their cause. You're not a traitor, are you?
No, but he is a killer. Delsin Rowe has the unique ability to catch powers like their Pokemon, giving him a variety of ways to attack his enemies. After a confrontation with a powerful Conduit, Delsin's sole purpose is to obtain her power too, so he can save his tribe. In his efforts, he traverses downtown Seattle, killing off many of her men in order to get to her. Like the Cole MacGrath video, I'll be going the good route, which leaves quite a lot of kills on the table, since the game encourages subduing enemies over finishing them off. Despite that, Delsin puts in the work, so just how many of the DUP are KIA? The game opens 7 years after the events of Infamous 2, with the world reacting pretty negatively to conduits, or bioterrorists if you're a hater. After Empire City was completely destroyed and New Marais turned into a battleground, the US government formed the Department of Unified Protection to hunt down and detain conduits. Over the past 7 years, their success led them to believe all conduits had been captured, resulting in a planned turnover to the military. And this is where we join Delsin, a street punk without a purpose outside of his one passion: graffiti. He's pretty bad at doing it secretly though, as police sirens indicate they know what he's up to, so he climbs down into the interior of the building and we meet Betty, who will talk to the cops and pretend she never saw him. There's another building just down the road he parkours his way to in a failed attempt at an alibi.
Hey man, I've been looking like forever for you.
Mid-sibling spat, Delsin notices a truck speeding down the street. It flips over and spills its human contents onto the streets. They watch as a couple orange jumpsuits run off. Delsin's brother Reggie goes after them while Delsin helps the lone guy trapped under the wreckage. But Reggie comes back and his cop status has the dude on edge, and he takes Delsin as a human shield for protection. And it's here they realize he's a conduit. He shoots smoke at his brother and Delsin has been jonesing for some and grabs his hand. But something unexpected happens and he's given a brief glimpse into the jumpsuit's mind. Like switching back to Trevor Phillips after a bender, we join Delsin waking up on the ground a few minutes later. Immediately something is wrong, or very right, depending on your perspective. He's like a baby learning to walk for the first time, very nearly going over a cliff face before he finds his brother trapped under a tree and a car. He helps him out from under there, alarming Reggie quite a bit, but his priority is the conduit that ran into the fish cannery nearby, which is now on fire. He warns Delsin not to use his powers in front of the tribe, but right away he disregards his advice and enters the building. Betty is inside telling the prisoner to smoke a dick. Delsin urges her to get outside and Delsin begins chasing the smoker, demanding he fix things or at the very least teach him how to use his newfound power. He eventually tackles the guy and prolonged contact gives him a longer look into his mind. Hank is a career criminal who specializes in escaping, so after the DUP captured him, he eventually saw an opportunity during their handoff to the military. Hank felt that mindfuck personally and knows Delsin saw the DUP prison and warns him he'll go there too if he's caught. He runs and Delsin chases him outside, but the DUP has arrived and Delsin watches as Hank is encased in concrete and assumes him dead. You would not want to trust Delsin with any kind of secret, as we watch him fail miserably at being just a normal human being. This results in a stressful grilling from Brooke Augustine, the head of the DUP and a fellow conduit, which Delsin can't resist speaking on.
What? It's kind of funny because aren't you a bioterrorist too?
She ain't about that sass though, and impales his leg with a concrete shard. She threatens to do the same to old-ass Betty and the rest of the tribe, which presents Delsin with his first karmic choice in the game. He confesses that he's a conduit, but his verbiage makes Augustine think he's just messing with her, so she impales poor old Betty's brittle bones with concrete. Delsin passes out and wakes up sometime later, realizing Augustine went insano mode on the tribe and brutalized all of their legs. He talks to Reggie, who gives some dour news. All of these people are dying from Augustine's work. They're slowly being poisoned by her concrete, so Delsin suddenly has a purpose. He intends to confront Augustine and drain her power so he can save his people. Reggie elects to drive him to Seattle, where the DUP set up base looking for the escaped conduits, but he wants to find a cure to make Delsin normal again, which is dumb. The road to Seattle is blocked though, forcing them on foot, which leads to Delsin discovering the power of core relays and blast shards. While he increases his powers, Reggie runs in the direction of a shouting woman. When Delsin links up with him a few minutes later, he finds a bus full of people have been trapped on the bridge after Augustine's careless roadblock. He destroys the barriers, which reveals himself as a conduit and earns the distrust of everyone on the bus. So Reggie will not let him on and says he'll drive the frightened civilians across the bridge. And that leaves Delsin to find his way on foot, but also gives us the first kills of the game as he brutalizes 6 thugs in the tunnels. During most of these fights, there are guys rolling around on the ground that can be subdued, or guys like this that surrender. So whenever the opportunity presents itself, they are always subdued for good karma. Sure, maybe his 6 friends are fucking dead now, but he surely learned his lesson and will never try committing any more crimes in the fear of a conduit beating, right?
We're not all monsters.
Afterwards, a loud explosion outside echoes out and asbestos dust washes over them. Delsin hurries over the broken bridge, worried his brother was caught in the blast, but he spots him in the distance and rushes over there to help him up. Just beyond the bridge is a DUP checkpoint, and Reggie convinces Delsin to go through it and attempt to sneak by them without any violence. But that is just not how this works, Reggie! And Delsin is forced into killing the first DUP agents as their equipment picks up his conduit nature, and they go head to head, losing a total of 26 men as soon as Delsin arrives in Seattle. They have mobile command centers stationed around the city that help them maintain control of districts, so Delsin destroys it and provides some much needed peace to the civilians in this sector. The DUP utilize force conduits, which Delsin attempts to drain their power, but it doesn't work on these low-level bitches. Reggie assists in searching for other conduits Delsin can use to power up, but in the meantime, Delsin searches for more core relays to broaden his smoke powers, and in the process, puts down another 10 dupe agents. The DUP are highly organized, so to make their job more difficult, Reggie suggests Delsin knock out their central comm unit on top of the Space Needle. This grants Delsin his final and most powerful smoke attack he uses to knock out their comms, but more importantly, leaves a small 15-body graveyard atop the city's main tourist destination. There are moments throughout the game that force Delsin into dealing with the DUP mobile command centers before he can advance the story, so he does exactly that and earns another 13 kills. He overhears a news broadcast discussing a conduit serial killer, giving Delsin the lead on another person he can suck on. He examines a recent corpse strung up for all to see, and snaps photos to send to Reggie for examination. A second one is discovered nearby, but the DUP are there and need to be cleared out before Delsin can investigate further. Reggie runs facial recognition on the second guy and finds a file confirming he's a drug dealer. Delsin notices a stash a few feet away and gets his night ruined when the conduit snipes the goods. He chases the culprit, but they're too quick, so he goes back to their roost and finds her clothes and the name Brent written inside the billboard. He shoots some photos back to Reggie, and apparently the name Brent is an uncommon one here in the Pacific Northwest, because within minutes he finds a Brent Walker with a rap sheet. He's recently deceased, and Delsin goes to check out his place of death, but finds some dealers outside looking to get crazy, but instead get dealt their demise. Inside is a memorial to Brent and a single clue in the form of a takeout bag that points Delsin in another direction. Right outside the restaurant are some protesters demanding his kind leave Seattle, so before they piss him right the fuck off, he scales the building and waits near the neon sign. He sees a chance to solid snake it under a box and wait for the conduit to arrive. After sunset, Delsin's patience pays off, and she shows up talking about money like a superpowered Mr. Krabs. Delsin grabs her hand and gets a little taste of that power, which initiates another chase sequence, but this time, Delsin is able to keep up using her neon power. The skylight collapses beneath them and they tumble into a warehouse that conveniently has a few neon lights turned on specifically for this boss fight. After being a greedy little sucker, Delsin absorbs all the light around the place to starve her out and allow him the chance to fully absorb her powers and get a glimpse into her mind. He formally meets Abigail Walker, also referred to as Fetch. Oh yeah, she made it happen. She lived a rough life and lost everyone she knew, eventually getting captured by the DUP after her brother Brent's death and trained her to kill. She uses that training to deal out her own form of capital punishment to any drug dealer she finds. Reggie finds them on the ground and Delsin has to convince him to slow his roll and leave her be, presenting Delsin with a redeem or corrupt option. He promises to keep an eye on her and reassures Reggie she can help them out. Delsin works with Fetch to get a better understanding of his new power, but also realizes he can't use powers in conjunction with one another, and instead has to manually switch between them by absorbing energy related to each power. With Fetch's help, he seeks out core relays to absorb and strengthen his neon abilities, which give him an opportunity to subdue a lot of the DUP. Eventually his powers get stronger though, which cause certain death when he fights off members of the DUP in the streets. Now that he's powered up, he agrees to help Fetch against a gang of dealers who are using the marina to stash a lot of their product and imprison sex workers. So Delsin shows up to clean the place up and adds 47 kills, easily the most in one go so far. She uses Delsin's street art to target the drug-filled boats and they free their slaves from captivity.
I think a couple of low-life bioterrorists will ever get thanked for saving people.
Yeah. I think you might have saved me.
Afterwards, Reggie calls Delsin about a major DUP presence searching for one of the other conduits, but it's clear across the city and a well-defended bridge stands in the way. A fantastic shot from the DUP down below allows Delsin to relapse into a smoking head, which he uses for his cinematic ground pound that obliterates the 3 guys down below. The length of the bridge is armed with turrets that he destroys, but on the other end of the bridge wait 6 more DUP agents who meet their doom. Augustine emerges and wants Delsin to show her his new powers, but he claims he's just a smoker, until she sends a much more powerful force conduit his way, along with a bunch of neon lights to force him into showing her. He shows off his new powers, exciting Augustine an alarming amount while he kills her guy in front of her. Delsin admits he just wants a little bit of her concrete power to save his tribe, but much like Annie Wilkes, she's now his biggest fan and intends to force him into staying with her. Some third-party intervention prevents that, however, picking up a half-concrete Delsin and dropping him safely on a rooftop. With a new area comes a fresh command center that needs to be destroyed, along with the 20 lives guarding it. Delsin gets a call from a self-confessed fan named Eugene, who is itching to help Delsin out. He just wants to meet the other escaped conduit, and while Eugene is initially hesitant, he informs Delsin the dupes captured him and will be bringing him through the overpass later that day. Delsin destroys the support beams and climbs up to the road and waits. The weight of the DUP vehicles causes the road to crumble, and I won't count anyone in this first vehicle since all it does is flip over. A cloud of dust surrounds the area, allowing Delsin to take down 11 guys on the bridge easily enough. Unfortunately, the bus on the bridge doesn't contain a single person, so Eugene forwards an app he created that taps into the DUP network so Delsin can pinpoint their locations and check other buses. But again, no escaped conduit, and just the force kinds working for the DUP that get Delsin's total kill count over 200. He does see the ability this new conduit has though, and is thoroughly impressed with the battle angels sent to help him out. Delsin finds a vest of DUP agents placed on their prisoners and searches the area, eventually chasing one down before one of those angels snatches him off the streets. Reggie has an idea though, and dresses up as one of the prisoners, then has Delsin chase him through the streets and shoot at him.
Shoot near me. Near me. Hey, do you want me to shoot back?
His plan works, and he's picked up by an angel and tracked to a location with a lot of large screens the angels emerged from. Delsin destroys each screen and sends the angels to hell, then finds his big brother hugging a post and regretting his life decisions.
I'm gonna take this shit off. Then I'm gonna go cry myself to sleep.
On the bright side, big bro, you help find the conduit's lair. He goes inside right as Eugene warns him not to enter, but those sweet video angels are far too enticing to heed his warnings. He sucks him to the TV and battles a much larger angel, doing this thrice until he defeats him for good. He does what he did to Hank and Fetch previously, grabbing his arm and getting the conduit's backstory. Eugene is a loner that likes to keep to himself, but bullies push him too far and he unleashes powers, resulting in a pickup by the DUP. He spent 6 years detained, and once he got the opportunity to escape, he fully intended to hide out for the rest of his life. But when he saw the DUP kidnapping conduits, he sent his angels out to help them. Reggie comes in, and since it's been about 5 minutes since being a dickhead, he sees the opportunity to do so here. But Delsin backs Eugene up and requests his help in handling his new video powers. This time is different though, with all of his powers seemingly erased, which Reggie takes as good news now that Delsin is normal again. Right, because the DUP would simply leave him alone now, right, you dumbass? Delsin wants to open up this relay core and see if he can drain it, and Reggie reluctantly caps that fucking thing so Delsin can see what these powers do. Ooh, invisibility!
I've been planning what I would do if I could turn invisible since I hit puberty. And this conversation is now over.
Just like the smoke and neon powers before it, Delsin is forced into hunting down core relays to drain and improve his arsenal. This turns into a bloodbath as he gets stronger and eliminates a couple dozen dupes. For me personally, this is my favorite power Delsin gets. It's fun in combat, but also fun to traverse the city by flying around and using satellites to gain elevation. Once Delsin gets a hang of it, Eugene calls him for a meeting. There's a gang called the Excursions that have been capturing some of the other escaped conduits and are planning on selling them to the DUP. They hang out at a construction site and are clearly lost in thought as Delsin waltzes around the place subduing a bunch of them, until they snap out of their daze and fight back, which was a dumb decision on their part because 19 of them die instead of joining their friends in a peaceful sleep. The captives are nowhere in sight though, and that's because they're already loaded into shipping containers for the DUP pickup. So Delsin's gotta hustle and bring them down while Eugene uses his angels to ensure a smooth drop to the streets. The final container is surrounded by DUP, and Eugene puts in the work here. Delsin only nabs 5 kills, whereas Eugene's angels take on the majority of the dupe agents and solo the stronger ones without Delsin's help. Say what you want about Delsin Rowe, but he did bring Eugene out of his shell and instill some confidence in him, and possibly a love for the dramatic. Reggie calls him right after telling Delsin to get high so he can check out Augustine's tower. There's a heavy DUP presence around it, and when Delsin goes to check things out, he locates scorched earth, as if he was the one that killed these people. While he investigates the area, he fends off the DUP looking to do the same. Things become more clear when Fetch calls to rag on him for not including her in the fun. He meets up with her, realizing Hank didn't die earlier and that he's escaped Augustine's tower. If he's able to get out, then he most certainly knows a way in, right? Fetch tells him good luck, but she doesn't trust the dude, which should be the first indicator that Delsin should rethink things. But he charges after Hank, dodging DUP forces along the way, and eventually getting ambushed and knocked out by the escaped Conduit. Once Delsin wakes up, Hank calls him and remarks on what a weak chin the kid's got, but ultimately he agrees to taking on Augustine. Before he can continue, however, there's another command center that's got to explode. This one isn't well manned and only results in 5 dupe deaths. Once he clears the command center, he hops on a call with Hank to find out how he can enter the tower. There's a heavily protected transformer near it, but he informs Delsin of Fetch's and Eugene's capture. He thinks the best way to get to Augustine is by luring her out after causing havoc during their rescue. Delsin thinks that sounds real fucking fun, so they plan to link up, and on the way over there, Reggie warns him not to trust the convict. Reggie joins them before their mission and scouts the area out, pointing out the best entry point and extraction spot. Hank shows up and they trot away together and enter the concrete island. They lure DUP agents out by taking out support beams to make the place unstable. Hank pulls his weight here, but Delsin winds up with most of the kills as his count ends at 20. While Delsin approaches the core relay, Augustine ambushes him, and he quickly realizes Hank sold him out. But his brother has his back and blasts that stone-hearted monster with a rocket launcher. This breaks the concrete around Delsin's feet, but not his hands, leaving Reggie to get his own fair share of dupe murders to protect his little bro as he flees. He frees his bindings, and they begin whittling away at the concrete holding Eugene in place, but Augustine has had enough time to recover and encases Reggie's legs and shatters the concrete beneath their feet. Delsin is holding onto his bro but lacks the strength to pull him up, leaving Reggie to sacrifice himself to ensure his little brother's survival. Delsin's rage overcomes him and finally pits him and Brooke Augustine against each other. When she realizes maybe she has her hands full here, she calls in backup, who all get exterminated in Delsin's anger. His power is too much for Augustine to contend with, but it also sends the concrete island into the ocean, preventing Delsin from finishing her off. She flees back to her tower while Delsin comes to on the street and is immediately thrown into a fight. He shifts focus to Hank, blaming him for putting them in that situation in the first place, and uses Eugene's app to track him. Just a few DUP agents are killed during this sequence as he treks across the city and eventually corners Hank at the marina. Hank attempts to explain himself but only sounds foolish, trusting Augustine, until he reveals she abducted his daughter to force him into her bidding. She calls for her dad out on the water, but he can't respond because Delsin just has to choke him a little bit before releasing him and telling him to go. Delsin arrives at the transformer Hank told him about and shuts it down, which only cuts power to half the tower. But Delsin's smoke will get him further up using the shafts. There's a lot of guys defending the lower portion, but only one unfortunate soul leaves this mortal realm before Delsin bypasses the rest of them and ascends the tower. He gets some assistance from his 2 new superpowered friends, with both Fetch and Eugene showing up to help fight the DUP. That doesn't stop Delsin from getting his fair share of kills, though. Oh no, because 22 more are taken down by Mr. Rowe as Fetch cuts a hole in the roof for him to blast through. Fetch and Eugene stay outside to fight the remaining dupes, while Delsin confronts Augustine for the last time. She tries to explain her actions as protecting conduits from all-out murder by the US government, which, is admirable if it weren't for the forced abductions, murder of innocent civilians, holding a major city hostage, and enslaving conduits to fight for her. The good karma route has Delsin seeking to expose who Augustine really is, which she can't allow. So their scuffle begins, and she purposefully allows him to absorb her concrete power. Knowing he suffers from a bit of a hangover afterwards, she takes the advantage, but Eugene is looking out for his newfound bro and tosses core relays inside to keep him alive. After absorbing a few of those, Delsin gets a hang of his new powers and makes Augustine look like a chump, who was boasting about having 7 years of experience on him, yet she still gets her ass beat by a street punk who got powers 2 weeks prior. He encases her in concrete as her eyes fill with fear, and he details the events that take place after her downfall, with the DUP getting dismantled and normies and conduits beginning to coexist. Delsin returns home to his tribe and does what he originally set out to do, save their poor legs from those concrete daggers, and ends the game by memorializing his brother using the billboard on top of the roof. And that's where we leave Delsin Rowe, and likely where his story is finished unless he returns in a future installment in the franchise. I think he gets a bad rap, and while he's most definitely not a person I'd want to hang out with in RL, he's a decent dude that really needed a purpose. When it's all said and done, Delsin finishes 2-week Seattle vacation with 341 kills. That puts him way below his counterpart in Cole MacGrath, even if we don't count the RFI explosion. On the leaderboard, Delsin falls in the bottom half of kills, just under Johnny Klebitz and above Vito Scaletta. The variety of enemies is a little lacking, with Delsin mainly killing DUP agents who made up 79% of the kills, whereas random gangbangers and dealers made up the rest. I performed a higher percentage of melee attacks in this game, with 30.2% of deaths resulting in Delsin throwing hands, but in terms of powered kills, his smoke ability chalked up 35.78% of the kills. It definitely had the advantage of going first here though, because I much prefer both neon and video powers over smoke. It took me 7 hours and 18 minutes to finish the game, which gives me a kill on average every 1.3 minutes. And that wraps up Second Son. I'll be doing First Light next, which I personally found a hell of a lot more fun than this one, which isn't a knock on Second Son in any way. Fetch just kicks ass to play as, and we'll see how she stacks up against Delsin. Consider hitting subscribe for more videos like this, and hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Thanks as always for watching. I'm King Deschain, signing off for now.